Hey everybody, Tony D with your Hollywoke hot take. And I guess we're still talking about Cuties. For those of you who don't know, Cuties is this movie on Netflix. It was a French film about 11-year-old girls who join a twerking dance group. And unfortunately, the movie is very provocative, and it shouldn't be because the girls are 11. They're actually 11. The actresses are 11 years old, and the clips are being described as highly sexualized dance routines depicting characters in other sexual situations. And a lot of people are disturbed by this. Yeah, it's because they're 11. You know, it's bad enough Toddlers and Tiaras was on the Discovery Channel, and I just thought, oh, I'm not watching that. You know, I don't even want this stuff on my computer like these clips. From what little I've seen of this, you know, I'm out. I've been out. You know, after the poster, I was out. I mean, it's not my kind of movie, obviously. I'm not a dance movie guy anyway, but, you know, who wants to see little kids doing provocative stuff? That's not what people want to see. I don't know who this audience, what's the audience here? What's the audience? At the end of the day, what's the audience for this movie? I don't see, the only possible normal audience for this would be women who could somehow relate to being 11 and going through this phase as young girls. Maybe. And that seems like a stretch to me. It seems like, you know, if that's the case, where are the women to defend this movie? I don't see it, and I think Netflix is stupid for defending it, and it's become a political issue. I was watching Nerdotic, not Nerdotic, Nerdrotic.com, Neurotic.com. That's Nerdotic, Neurotic, not Nerdrotic, not Nerd Erotic. And he's a YouTuber. He does stuff on geek stuff and movies and TV shows, and he normally does stuff about Star Trek. But he's very upset by this, and I agree with him. They politicized it because we have the critics, the normal critics, the usual suspects in the world of critics, and they're all lauding this movie, like 94% of them. And normal people are just trashing it. This is the same sort of division like with The Last Jedi and Captain Marvel, that kind of thing. It's become political. And there are these articles saying, well, you know, right-wing trolls are trashing Cuties online. No, it's not that at all. Even on Twitter, a cesspool, a haven of scum and villainy for the most part, of the left's scum and villainy, you can find plenty of people who are going, ooh, this is way too much. It's too much. It's over the top. If you're going to do a story about, you know, the awakening of young women's sexuality, you do it with characters who are teenagers, and you get very young actresses who are like 18 and up, but look that young. Because that way, no one gets hurt, right? You don't have actual children doing it. And people can suspend their disbelief. They can. You know, when you watch a movie, you don't, you know, there was a great article that said for the early Han Solo movie, the pitch was, why not just let Harrison Ford play young Han Solo and we'll all just pretend to ignore that he's older, which would have been a great thing. I would have been totally down for that. You know, I remember watching the Howard Stern movie, Private Parts, and Howard plays himself, and you know, Howard's like pretty obsessed with his looks and staying in shape and whatnot, and he got in shape for the movie, so he plays himself over the period of decades, but he was still older. So, you know, it worked out fine. It worked out perfectly fine. You know, people were older, but they were playing themselves as younger. And quite frankly, for some of them, you know, a lot of people didn't know what Howard looked like when he was younger, really, and certainly not Fred Norris and other people. So the idea that we had to have this movie, you know, this isn't the 1950s, and unfortunately, Hollywood is still fighting the battle. They're still fighting this sexual revolution battle. Everyone in Hollywood is just they're still like, oh, you know, we've got to push the boundaries because, you know, the straights won't let us. It's a ridiculous sort of progressive fight that was won decades ago, but they just can't take the win and move on. They're still stuck in this pattern. So many people, oh, we need to push the boundaries. We need to push the boundaries. You also need to make a movie that people actually want to see. You know, and this isn't about, oh, well, the movie makes you uncomfortable, so you just don't understand it. It's not about that. You know, these actresses, they're actually 11. They shouldn't be doing this. They just shouldn't be doing this. That's too young. Maybe if you had done something like the Big Mouth cartoon, right? The Big Mouth, they have adult actors and actresses voicing kids going through puberty. Like if you had done something like that, if it had been animated and you had actual adults. You know, and part of the outrage by this is that you actually used 11-year-olds. This is live action 11-year-olds. And that some people, and I think we know what kind of people, will you know, go see this movie for reasons that have nothing to do with art. You know, I think this is a poor attempt at art because this isn't a story that was needed, in my view. It's not something, oh man, I've been waiting for the movie about 11-year-olds, you know, becoming budding young women. It's too young. It's just too young. You know, I'm not even a parent, and you know, I can see that it's too young. You know, I have nieces and cousins that who have been that age. It's like you don't put them in these situations. You just don't. You shield them because they are still kids. You know, when they're teenagers, that's the age you start. Okay, well, I guess we got to let them, you know, not do too much, but oh, yeah, we let them start interacting more and doing stuff on their own. Slowly ramp it up over the 5 or 6 years before they're a legal adult. But you know, you still protect them. And this movie feels like it's promoting this idea, like, well, you know, 11-year-olds, they can start to be off on their own, and no one believes that. Except people who are in this bubble of constantly pushing the envelope. I mean, you know, what's next is the question. Are you going to go younger? Are you going to make more of these movies? I mean, it's so wrong on many levels. And I think, you know, part of it's cultural. You know, I think the French, they're different. They got a different culture. You know, United States, we've drawn some lines here, and to politicize this, to say, well, it's only people on the right, it's just simply not true. Simply not true. Much, and I've always said this, much like a lot of people in Washington have become tone deaf to their constituents, Hollywood similarly has become tone deaf to its audience, and that's a fatal error. A fatal error, not error on their part. Because you cannot sustain an entertainment business or entertainment when you don't understand what your audience wants. You have to always aim something at an audience. So if you can't identify the audience, and I would, if I interviewed this filmmaker, I would say, well, who is this movie for? Who's the audience? I would be interested in hearing the answer to that question, because I don't think it's going to be a very big audience. And I don't think you can just, oh, it's a family movie. It's not a family. This isn't a family movie. That's not a family subject matter. I can't imagine a father, you know, wanting to sit through this movie with his daughter. That sounds awful. That sounds incredibly uncomfortable. So I don't see where you're getting an audience. And if you don't have an audience, you know, you're just doing something that nobody wants. And in my view, that, I mean, is that really art? If you're doing something that nobody wants, is it art? I question that, you know, I question that. I don't think it is. You know, can you name me a great piece of art that nobody wanted, that there was no audience for? You know, yes, there have been times when pieces of art have come out and it's like, oh, it's dangerous, but when that has happened, there have been groups of people that defended it, as well as people who attacked it. The people who are defending this movie, I don't think they really care about the movie. They're paid shills, essentially. They're the paid press. They laud any movie. And then if it's political, they laud it even more if it's on the right side of history in their view. And that, unfortunately, is the current system that we live under. We don't have real independent journalism in the world of critics in the major newspapers and media outlets. You can get a good review, you know, on YouTube or independent media, but you really can't get it in the mainstream media anymore. Now, that doesn't mean they don't positively review some good movies and negatively review bad movies. Sometimes that overlaps with their agenda, and then they're fine with it. But it's agenda first, critics second. And we've seen that time and time again. Very few of these people, and there's very little standard. You know, there's not really a critics school. I mean, there's film criticism, but it's not like you're licensed. It's not like if you lie your ass off that, oh, somebody's going to come and sue you over it or kick you out of your job. If you're lauding the right movies, even if you've never even seen them, no one cares. And I promise you, some people probably who wrote positive reviews of this movie, as every other major movie, especially Star Wars, I guarantee you, some of them didn't even see the movie. They don't care. They're amoral in that way. And they're also bribed too. I mean, a lot of people don't know this. I have a friend he's a film critic. He worked for a major newspaper and in a major city, and he said, yeah, there's all kinds of amazing, you know, they fly you out. Sometimes they'll bring you on the set. They'll give you food and tote bags and little prizes. And, you know, they're not going to give you money, but they're going to treat you like a king. And then they're going to give you access. And you play ball, you keep getting that access. You go through all that and say this movie's a piece of crap, they're going to forget you. They're going to suddenly take you off the list. And without access, why does the newspaper need you or the media outlet? So, you know, I don't believe that a lot of these critics even really like this movie. They just say they do because it's all woke and wonderful. You know, and you know, maybe it's because they don't see the harm it potentially can cause, but you know, for me, I just think it's a dumb movie. It could have easily been corrected. You know, either the dance could have, you know, been changed to something much less provocative, or they could have upped the age of the girls and gotten adult actresses to play them, or probably the best thing they could have done is do an animated version of it where you would have had adult actors and actresses doing the voices, and then it would be far removed from this. You know, I think the main problem with this is the imagery that they're putting in the movie. and to some extent the story, but if they were cartoon characters, that problem would be alleviated somewhat. Um, but you know, it's Hollywoke, man. And at a time when you know a lot of people are also mentioning that law that I did a little bit of analysis of, and that's really bad optics. It's horrific optics. You know, you do have some people on the right calling out California for being the capital of this in the world, and they have their problems. That is absolutely 100% true. There seems to be probably more problems than normal in this area, in and around the movie industry, the showbiz in general. So, why would you do this? You know, it's a risk that just makes the situation even worse for Hollywood. It just confirms everybody's worst fear. And if you think there's nowhere else to go, Hollywood, you're wrong. People are already living without movies and going to the movie theater. And with all these avenues on the internet to get movies, you're just, you know, you're just going to become more clickbait on the internet. Your brands are going to be worthless if you could continue down this path. This brand, Netflix, will they? I don't know if they'll ever recover from this. People are canceling their subscription. I'm certainly probably going to cancel mine, mostly because I was already considering it. I don't really have time to watch Netflix anymore. There's a couple things I like on it: Trailer Park Boys and F is for Family. But you know, after I get caught up on them, might be time to cancel.